What started off as an experiment to improve my pour overs so we can see how the fines and the microfines are working actually came out to be one of the best tasting coffees ever. So this is the full recipe for the floating AeroPuck. But before we get into the video, I just wanted to give everybody a shout out and thanks for all the support I've been having, especially on the ugly coffees. These are the coffees where I have 2 bags of coffees for either $15 for 250 grams or $28 for 2 500-gram bags. And the support you guys have had for it is great. I will be featuring a honey processed Central Americano in the next coming order. And yeah, it's just a little pilot project I'm doing till the end of September. I might probably just keep it for longer. I just want to see how we can help and adapt to the current ugly situations with costs of coffee going up. So yeah, if you guys want to support this pilot project of mine, it's just on the website, talescoffee.com. So yeah, anyways, right back to the video. So we are using one of the ugly coffees today. I have this on a scale already. We're going to put this, make sure you're at the 3, and then I'm going to fill it with 100 grams of water first. Water first allows us to make sure the gases are released as gently as possible. Boiling water is fine. And then you just add your beans in. I grind them fairly fine as always. I remove all the microfines as much as possible when I do this. And then what you want to do now is you just want to stir it in. The act of stirring is very interesting. It helps you actually distribute the water a lot better. And then it also spins the microfines and then the normal boulders to separate from each other. Now, what you're going to get here is you're just going to get this kind of like thick slurry. It's quite a thick mess. You're going to see some like grind still floating up there. But this way you don't get the bubbles just kind of like overly gassy. You can see a bit of like the trap top there. Then you've got the boulders. And then you want to do a second pour. So on your second pour, you want to pour really slowly. And then you just want to make sure you hit all the grinds that are at the top. You want to crack the crust and push it down. I think pouring actually makes more agitation than the stir itself, which is kind of weird, but I'm going to show you guys that in a different video. So as you can see, once I do the second pour, a lot of the grinds already start to sink. What you want to do now is just make sure all the grinds at the top have been agitated and sank to the bottom. So an interesting thing is if you watch it and you watch it, let it naturally kind of sink, you're going to get the boulders, then you're going to get the microfines and then the boulders. And it's just like 3 different layers. And I find that very interesting because it just shows how, you know, the stream of the water brews and what might be happening in a pour over. So not everything sinks all at the same time. It might be different due to the amount of agitation the stream has affected on that particular particle. But yeah, it just shows that at certain points, maybe there's too much gas or something like that that's floating that's preventing you from agitating as much to sink it at the same rate. So multi-pours have always been popular for that. But then what happens is you get these layers of boulders, fines, boulders, fines, boulders, and fines. So what I like to do is to prevent that from happening, I like to stir it all up, move it all to the bottom, lift every grind up just to make sure everything is fully saturated. You can do zigzags, you can do swirls, different shapes. You can stir in a triangle, anything you want. Okay. And then once you let that settle, you're going to notice all the fines are at the top, and then all the boulders are at the bottom. This is exactly what you're looking for. See the This process could take like a minute or 2. You want to see that all the little particles at the top up here have also settled as well. It's quite important to do that. It's interesting because the last little bits to fall are probably like the chaff and everything. So Yeah, we're going to give that a minute or two. I'm guessing there's still like some sediment just floating from the top. But anyways, I think we're nearly there. What you want to do now is you want to give it a quick little spin. Then you pull up the microfines from the top. And then from here, you get it off the scale. And you lift it up just a little bit. So I lift it to the number 4. You want to be very careful because if you pull too hard, it starts to pull out really quickly. And then here, what I started to do is I actually started to pull it back down to a 3.5. And the reason is it pulls the liquids out of here first, and then it pushes it back down in. So that this way, when we put the cap on, and when we flip it, wait. We have a better seal. Well, I kind of flipped it a bit slow, so some of the grinds fell back down, but it's okay. And then you just do a quick. Now the reason you want to do it slow is because if you push too fast, I tend to find this like bitterness comes out. I don't know, maybe that's just a preference. Maybe I also suck at pouring it too fast. And once you hear like this little gassy sound, you want to take it off. You don't want all the liquids to kind of go through, because I think the end is very bitter. And then from here, we add another 50 grams of beans back, or water back in. And boom, that's the floating AeroPuck. So let's just quickly talk about it. So we're doing a Costa Rica. We're expecting kind of like a nicer, richer texture. This method itself allows a lot of oils to pass through. The real like thought process behind it is I didn't want the liquids to pass through the beans as much as possible, because I realized that the grinds reabsorb a lot of the oils and the flavors are in the fats. So you lose a lot of flavors when you have too big of a bed for the water to pass through or the coffee to pass through. And so the thinner the coffee puck, the more oils, the more flavors that get to pass through. So that's why I opted with something like this. Now, if you brew like I do at the 3 with 20 grams of beans in, you can only really get 200 grams of water. That's why I add 50 grams of water afterwards. That brings it to a 1 to 12.5. I think this is actually like one of the richer, but it's definitely a really, really sweet cup of coffee. Texture's great. Flavor's really there. It's super sweet compared to, like my pour overs. Yeah, I actually think this is quite an interesting method. I think you guys should give it a try. There's actually a lot to learn from this, especially with the way the fines kind of sink, or in general how the beans sink, and how we can actually reapply that knowledge back to pour overs. What I have been noticing is that, if I do a traditional single pour where I only agitate at the end, it actually clogs for some of the slower beans. Whereas if I were to agitate from the beginning to the end, or if I were to stir from the beginning to the end, I actually have less clogging, which is kind of an interesting thing. But now that I've seen on the Aeropress, I can see that there's layers of just microfines kind of sitting in between the beds. And me kind of spinning it and holding everything up pushes all the microfines probably to the edges more so, which allows more of the granulars to kind of stay in the middle, the boulders stay in the middle, which allows for better flow rate overall. So it's kind of interesting how, potentially stirring from beginning to end actually creates quote unquote less agitation or less clogging, and it creates less over extracted flavors, which is kind of counterintuitive because we always think that the agitation creates a lot of over extraction flavors. But I think the over extraction actually comes from when you have muddy beds tend to have this papery flavor to it. And I think it's just over extracting, especially the top, and not so much extracting the bottom. And so I think that imbalance in extraction is what creates this over extracted quote unquote flavor. And I think being able to test this, especially with the floating AeroPress, you can see how, the oils are getting through more. The fines are not in the way, and how we can kind of just manipulate that during the pour over is very important. So yeah, stay tuned. I think we're on to something new. I think it's quite an interesting path to kind of go down, but it's very different from what the traditional, theorists say for brewing. But yeah, I mean, let me know what you guys think. Try it out. Hope you guys like the technique. Yeah, it's super simple, right? 100-degree water, 20 grams of beans. You don't really need a scale. You just weigh the beans, I guess. Anyways, happy brewing. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye.